Welcome back for another video. Final upload of the week as we look forward to a Saturday deadline for Gameweek 12. In this video we're going to catch up with what the experts are doing with a dig into their transfers, captaincy, some tips and the experts team. If you'd like to benefit from this data every game week, hit subscribe if you're not already. So let's start off with a quick manager highlight, and at the very top of the experts league is Appo still. He's moved higher up in rank after a solid score of 40 in a low scoring game week. He's up to 3.3k overall now. There's 2 experts in the top 10k currently, and there's a further 15 in the top 100k. The biggest score among the experts was just 48, which underlines what a challenging game week it was. Let's hope for a much better Game Week 12. Onto their transfer activity this week. No surprises given a couple of injuries and a lot of rolled transfers last week that 58% are making one transfer, 23% are making 2 moves, and 19% are rolling. It's generally good practice to take 2 free transfers into an international break, which is immediately followed by Game Week 12, but of course it's not always possible to do so. 2 free transfers does at least keep you flexible in case of any surprises over the break. So if you're looking at making a transfer just to improve your bench this week, then save the transfer. So with lots of transfers made, here's the top transfers this week. At the very top is Lascelles, who's being brought in by 19%. The one player who can threaten his spot is Botman. We haven't seen him since Game Week 6 though, and the latest is that he's been in Holland getting specialist treatment for the knee injury. So it sounds like Lascelles is secure for a while. For 4 mil, that's a route into the 3rd best defence in the league this season. Very rare that we're afforded such an opportunity for so cheap, so Lascelles is great, and he's got Bournemouth this week, so you can start him. Saka's the second most transferred in player by 13%, and Maddison's the most sold by 29%. Maddison has been withdrawn from international duty, and there's reportedly concerns that his ankle injury could be worse than first expected. So he's a definite sell this week, and if you can find the money for Saka, it's a great move this week, with Arsenal home to Burnley, who are still yet to keep a clean sheet this season, and Saka off the back of 1 goal 1 assist in the Champions League. Saka was seen hobbling after an awkward landing, but general consensus is that he'll be fine. It's rare that we get a direct honest answer from Arteta, so our own judgment is going to be necessary here. Failing that, if you can't find the money for Saka, then Martinelli's a quality pick for 7.7 mil. 0.9 mil saving on Saka, and let's not forget last season only a few points separated them. Saka and Martinelli could be particularly good picks if Nketiah misses out. We saw Trossard playing through the middle in the Champions League, and he much more closely resembles the likeness to Jesus, who is excellent at bringing others into the game and creating for the team, while Nketiah is a more typical out-and-out striker. 9% are buying Gabriel, 8% buying Saliba. Arsenal are top of the Game Week 12 clean sheet odds with a 54.5% chance. If you're looking to buy an Arsenal defender and you can afford either of them, then buy Saliba for the peace of mind of starts. He never misses a game, and something perhaps overlooked is that when we have the international break, Saliba gets a rest. France generally use Konate and Upamecano in centre-back, sometimes Hernandez or Pavard. Saliba's rarely used actually. Meanwhile, Gabriel's form has played himself into Brazil's starting 11 quite rightly, and he's starting pretty much every match. That was likely why we saw him rotated versus Sheffield United, as he had played around 9 consecutive matches on the bounce then. 11% are selling Udogie this week, who is suspended for Game Week 12, he'll be back in Game Week 13. Meanwhile, Ramirez serves the first of a 3-match suspension this weekend. 9% are moving fast to get rid of Turner, who has lost his spot in goal, Johnston being brought in by 7%, Leno 1%. So 29% have sold Maddison, 22% have brought Saka and Martinelli combined, so who are the other midfielders? Eze, Bowen, Mitoma and Fernandes are the others being picked up this week. Eze returned from injury last match and he got an assist off the bench, home to Everton this game week. Bowen chipped him with his 7th goal of the season last match and Mitoma got an assist. Mitoma home to Sheffield United this game week, who are worst in the league still for expected goals conceded. Estupiñán was looking like the perfect transfer after De Zerbi's comments on saving him for the weekend. He was brought on in the Europa League, but 13 minutes later went back off injured sadly. Pulling up the fixture ticker from FPL.page, who has the best fixture run over the next 8? It's Newcastle and West Ham joint top. Another reason to look at Lascelles. No transfers for Hall or Livramento this week, the experts perhaps waiting out to see who cements a spot on the team if either. Both are 4.3 mil defenders and they'd be gold given their attacking upside compared to Lascelles. Arsenal are 3rd on the fixture ticker, which makes Saliba, Gabriel, Saka and Martinelli great long-term holds. Avoid Zinchenko, who's likely to rotate with Tomiyasu. Nketiah wasn't in Arsenal's Champions League squad, carrying an injury. The latest from Arteta is that he and Ødegaard are racing against the clock to be fit. It's worth noting that Trossard was brought off early as well, which could be with a view to starting him again. We'll skip over the chip usage this week with none active. Just 12.5% of the experts have got their wildcard left. If you've still got yours and you can manage your team well enough to get to blank game week 18, then one very effective strategy will be to sell your Man City and Brentford assets when they blank in game week 18, and then wildcard them straight back into your team ahead of an expected double game week that may drop in game week 20. This is where you'll find an edge. Many managers not following this closely may not be aware of the blank and the potential double. 16% have used their triple captainship already. If you haven't, then that double's screaming for triple captain Haaland. Keep game week 18 in mind for every transfer you make between now and then as well. It's a bit of a balancing act, of course, because Arsenal defenders are worth it now, but they do face Liverpool in game week 18 as an example. Moving on to Experts Captaincy, and it's very interesting how the results look this week. Top of the poll is Salah with 58%, and then it's Haaland with 24%, and Saka with 14%. Mitoma, Martinelli, Son and Bowen are all being captained by a single manager each. It's very spread this week, and it's certainly a game where captaincy is less obvious. Salah has returned in 9 of 11 games this season, and he's also scored or assisted in 14 consecutive Premier League matches at Anfield, only failing to score once over that run, with 15 goals, 3 assists in 14. Incredible consistency. To make the case for Haaland though, his 1 pointer last game week is likely to put a lot of managers off, even though reality is that it was an unfortunate injury, and had he stayed on, it's fair to expect that he would have been involved in the goals, with Man City scoring a further 3 times without him. He played an hour midweek in the Champions League and he scored a brace, and he plays Chelsea, who was somehow not very convincing despite the 4-1 win over 9-man Spurs. Son still had a good chance to score, Bentancur had a great chance, and Dyer scored but he was slightly offside. Saka had a great game in the Champions League as well, so he's a good option. 1 goal, 1 assist and a 2-0 win over Sevilla. And Burnley have conceded 27 goals this season, only Sheffield United have conceded more with 30, and they haven't kept a clean sheet all season. The Nketiah news might play a factor in how strong of a captain Saka is, going back to the earlier point on Trossard. Let us know in the comments who your captain is this week and why. Moving on to the Experts team for Game Week 12, and if this video has been helpful, please consider subscribing to support the channel if you're not already. The Experts team is composed of the highest owned players among all the experts to build a consensus team of players that they basically agree on the most. The team is as follows. It's Areola in goal. In defence, Guehi joins the team alongside Cash and Gabriel. Salah captain in midfield, Son, Bowen, Saka and Gordon. It's Haaland vice captain alongside Watkins. And on the bench we've got Turner, Tsimikas, Archer and Taylor. Now Tsimikas is one to debate this week. Would you start him over Guehi or someone like that in your team? He was benched versus Luton, and then he started on Thursday night in the Europa League, but he made a very costly mistake against Toulouse, which immediately led to them scoring, and he was brought off at half time. Gomez did however play the full match, so a Gomez start again would mean 3 starts in 7 days, and Tsimikas bench would mean 1 start in 7 days. Many of us own Tsimikas, so drop your thoughts below. We've got Guehi in the team here. I don't talk about my team often in the Experts video, but this week I've actually started Maguire ahead of him. I've also added a new column here called Difference next to the player ownership. Let me know if that's a welcome change. That column is the difference between the Experts ownership and the overall ownership, which helps to identify those players that these top managers really like, which the overall player base are overlooking. For example, Salah's got 48% higher ownership, Cash 55%, Son 43%, Watkins 41%. Big discrepancies versus what the 10.2 million other managers are doing. It can also help identify the players that the experts aren't that keen on, which the overall player base do like. Interestingly, Trippier's 24% fewer ownership. He's by no means a bad pick. That's obvious, but it likely means that they're favouring stacking their midfield and front two, which sacrificing Trippier can afford. And perhaps the 3 mil saved on Lascelles can afford enough points to be made up elsewhere. Certainly that was the case last game week, with Lascelles and Trippier both scoring 9 points. If we start to see Trippier left back and Livramento right back, that might diminish Trippier's upside. Every game week we ask the experts to send in their tips and insight for us. Always great nuggets of info here, and here's what they had to say this week. Flair Player says, last game week is done now, don't be too hasty. A 20-point team can score 100 points the very next week. FPL Hogmeister says, tough call this week, I can't get to Saka without downgrading elsewhere, so instead leaning towards the cheaper Martinelli, on the basis that their 22-23 FPL stats are very similar. It's a risk though. Atomic FPL asks, how much emphasis should we be putting on 90-minute players? Is it worth risking minutes for cheaper players such as Gabriel over Saliba, particularly noting the Christmas period isn't too far away and rotation will become a bigger factor? Ben Coleman has some thoughts on the Tsimikas situation. After Tsimikas' poor performance in Europe, he seems likely to be dropped for Liverpool. I don't have the option to bench him, so I'm going to replace him with Livramento instead. Admittedly, he's another risk for minutes, but Newcastle are great for clean sheets, and we saw at Southampton how attacking he can be. FPL Cholo says, great week to get weird with captaincy. After the horror of Gameweek 11, it could be a good moment to get some fun back. Thanks very much for watching, hope you enjoyed the video. We're going to be live right here on this channel for the deadline Saturday morning. See you then.